Something happened in Beijing just 1 hour ago that is sending shockwaves through diplomatic circles and military command centers at the same time. A former senior Chinese official with direct connections to the highest levels of Chinese Communist Party leadership stepped before cameras and made a statement that nobody in the international community can afford to ignore. Speaking with the quiet confidence of someone who carries official backing, he declared that China fully supports Iran's right to defense and that China is ready to play a decisive role if the United States is truly seeking peace. Read that statement carefully because every single word was chosen with precision. This is not casual commentary from a retired bureaucrat filling airtime. This is Beijing sending a deliberate message through a trusted intermediary, and that message has 3 distinct layers that you need to understand in order to grasp what just changed in this crisis. Before we get to where this is going, we need to be honest about where things actually stand right now. The military campaign that launched on the 28th of February 2026 was presented publicly as a quick and decisive operation. The stated objectives were to destroy Iran's nuclear program, degrade its military capabilities, and force Iranian leadership to the negotiating table on American terms. Several months later, the reality on the ground is considerably more complicated than that original presentation suggested, and the gap between what was projected and what has materialized is now impossible to conceal. Iran has asserted effective control over the Strait of Hormuz through a combination of asymmetric tactics, mine warfare, and a demonstrated willingness to seize commercial vessels. The result is that normal shipping through one of the world's most critical waterways has become economically and practically impossible. Global oil prices have spiked to levels that are creating genuine economic pain for consumers in countries that have no direct stake in this conflict whatsoever. Financial markets have absorbed the consequences, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropping 8.3% as investors calculate the cascading effects of sustained energy disruption on the broader global economy. This is not the outcome that American strategic planning projected. Whatever intelligence assessments and operational design suggested would happen when this campaign began, a months-long conflict with Iran maintaining effective control of a critical maritime choke point, while American consumers absorbed the inflationary consequences, was never the plan. The administration is now managing a conflict whose costs are becoming visible in gas prices and investment portfolios across the country, and that political reality creates a very specific kind of vulnerability. China has now explicitly chosen to exploit that vulnerability, and it has done so with surgical precision. When the Chinese official says that Beijing is ready to play a decisive role if the United States is truly seeking peace, he is simultaneously accomplishing several things that serve Chinese strategic interests in ways that go well beyond the Iran conflict itself. He is positioning China as the reasonable party, the adult in the room interested in resolution, while framing the United States as the obstacle standing between the world and stability. He is signaling Chinese willingness to intervene diplomatically in ways that would give Beijing enormous influence over any eventual settlement. He is demonstrating to audiences across the developing world that China offers a credible alternative to American-dominated crisis management, and crucially, he may be offering something that the administration desperately needs as this conflict drags on without resolution. He may be offering an exit strategy dressed up as diplomacy. The potential state visit between the two heads of government reportedly being discussed for mid-May of 2026 is the single most important indicator to watch, and the reason why it matters so much is rooted in the basic logic of political face-saving. Any administration that has staked its credibility on a military campaign needs a way to declare success before stepping back from that campaign. A major summit where China brokers a ceasefire provides exactly the kind of narrative cover that allows an exit from a difficult situation while claiming the outcome was intentional all along. The messaging practically writes itself. A historic summit demonstrated the power of great power cooperation, and together the world's two most consequential nations arranged an end to the conflict on terms that serve long-term security interests. The fact that this involves accepting a ceasefire that leaves Iran in a stronger position than military operations have so far achieved would be buried under the spectacle of a major diplomatic moment between the two most powerful leaders on earth. For an administration that has built its brand on deal-making and the power of personal presidential diplomacy, that framing carries genuine political value. For Beijing, brokering a Middle East peace settlement would represent the most significant demonstration of Chinese global diplomatic leadership in modern history. Both sides have something to gain, which is precisely what makes this moment so consequential. The international context that makes China's move possible comes from a sweeping shift in global public perception that polling data has now confirmed. Surveys conducted across 14 countries in the developing world show that 71% of respondents now view China as a more stabilizing global force than the United States. This is not a marginal shift or a statistical blip that can be dismissed. This is a structural change in how much of the world perceives the relative contributions of the two superpowers to international order and stability. When the United States is managing a military conflict that has disrupted global energy supplies, created economic pain worldwide, and produced months of regional instability, while China is positioned as the voice of reason calling for dialogue and peace, those poll numbers reflect a real and consequential shift in international perception. Countries that might have automatically aligned with American positions in international forums a decade ago are now calculating their interests more independently. They are watching which great power engages with them more reliably, partners with them more consistently, and serves their development needs more concretely. The statement made in Beijing 1 hour ago was designed to be heard not just in Washington and Tehran, but in every capital across the developing world, where leaders are drawing their own conclusions from everything they are watching unfold. There are specific signals to track over the coming days and weeks that will reveal whether China's intervention becomes a genuine diplomatic turning point or remains at the level of strategic positioning. The first signal is rhetorical. Watch for officials and administration allies to begin subtly reframing the current status of the conflict, gradually shifting the public narrative so that the existing situation begins to sound like it was always the intended outcome, as though the original objectives have been substantially achieved. That kind of rhetorical repositioning is the necessary precondition for any negotiated exit that allows the administration to claim success while accepting terms that fall short of what was originally promised. The second and most decisive signal is confirmation or cancellation of the summit. If that meeting is confirmed with concrete agenda items related to Iran, it means both Beijing and Washington have calculated that a negotiated exit serves their respective interests, and the diplomatic path is genuine. If the summit is cancelled or indefinitely delayed, it signals that either Washington has decided to escalate rather than negotiate, or that Beijing has decided that continued pressure serves Chinese interests better than providing the administration with a ladder to climb down gracefully. The summit announcement or its absence will be the clearest available signal about the direction both powers intend to take. The third signal is economic, and it is the most relentless. Every month that oil prices remain elevated, every month that energy costs at home reflect the conflict's premium, the domestic political pressure to find an exit grows more intense. Legislators from states where fuel costs are a defining political issue, executives whose businesses are absorbing higher energy input costs, and ordinary people connecting what they pay at the pump to decisions made in Washington are all creating pressure that does not appear in diplomatic cables but shapes the environment in which every decision is ultimately made. What this statement from Beijing has done is change the geometry of the entire crisis by introducing a variable that shifts the incentive structure for every party involved. For Iran, visible Chinese backing provides diplomatic cover and a potential economic lifeline that makes continued resistance more sustainable and reduces the urgency of accepting unfavorable terms. For the United States, Chinese willingness to broker a settlement creates an exit path that does not require publicly acknowledging military failure. For China, the role of peacemaker in the world's most significant ongoing conflict would be the most powerful demonstration of global leadership available, one that would accelerate the perceptual shift that polling data already shows is well underway. The next 72 hours and the 2 to 3 weeks leading up to any potential summit will rank among the most consequential in modern diplomatic history. Beijing has concluded that this crisis has created a window to demonstrate a kind of global leadership that less volatile circumstances would never have made available. Whether the administration accepts the exit ladder being offered or doubles down on military options will determine not just the resolution of the Iran conflict, but the deeper question of which power's model of international engagement defines the next decade of global order. 1 hour ago, the rules of this crisis changed. The question that remains is whether the players recognize what changed and whether they have the strategic clarity to respond accordingly.